And this is the Adam Messer Show, and I'm your host, Adam Messer. And my special guest today is Michael Anderle, and we're going to be talking about like his books and all kinds of cool stuff. I'm going to do an intro in just a minute, but I want to have Sebastian play. Do you mind playing this a little bit, Sebastian? Sebastian Messer's my son, everybody, if you're first time tuning in, but I hope you enjoy this, and then we'll be right back and talk with Michael about all the awesome stuff that he's doing. Thank you, Sebastian. That's awesome. Okay, everybody. So this week we have a really special guest on, and you probably heard me mention his name, or you probably heard Craig Martelle mention his name. But Michael Anderle is an author who started the 20 books to 50K group that we talk about a lot. That it's an independent group set up for independent authors. And I just want to read this little bio. Michael Anderle burst onto the scenes at the end of 2015 with his best-selling series, The Kutherian. I hope I'm saying that correctly, Michael. The Kutherian Gambit. Since then, he's published dozens of books, hundreds of collaborations with, and released dozens more with LMBPN Publishing. Further, LMBPN has published approximately 220 audiobooks. That's amazing. And has licensed close to another 200 books with companies such as Dreamscape, Tantor, Podium, and RB Media. Mike created the 20 books to 50K in early 2016 and has shared insights with conferences, Mastermind by Craig Martelle, which Craig's been on the show quite a couple times now, under the 20 books to 50K brand in London, Scotland, Bali, Australia, and one of the premier author conferences of 20 books to 50K in Vegas event was held in November. He has spoken at DragonCon, Western Writers of America, the SFWA conference, and his Kevin J. Anderson Superstars conference, as well as podcasts and virtual conferences. So, Michael, welcome. Thank you so much for being on the show. I've really been wanting to have you on the show for a while now, so I'm glad that we were able to make this happen today. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Adam. It's a pleasure to be asked to join you.
And everybody, I'm just going to share something really quick. Michael, do you mind if I call you Mike? Is that okay?
No, I usually go by Mike.
Okay. So everybody, before the show, and this is a community radio station, and I'm just going to give Mike some props here. I joined the group probably a year and a half ago with the 20 books to 50K because I'm an indie author and I want to learn more about the process and all of that. And so I think it was maybe a month or so ago that we were, I had approached you and said, hey, I'd like to have you on the radio show. And, we had this date scheduled or whatever. And then today, y'all, before we get on the show, I was do a little prep, just say, hey, this is, what we're going to talk about and yada, yada, yada. It's kind of casual conversation style. And Mike's like, oh, so, it's a community radio station. And, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do a donation. And I was like, what? So, man, that's just amazing. Thank you, Mike, so much, because that's actually, we're all listener supported here. And, a kind gesture like that goes a very long way. So I just want to thank you right off the top because I wasn't expecting that. And I think it's just a wonderful thing for you to do, from the bottom of your heart. And I appreciate that kindness.
Thank you. I appreciate, it wasn't done. Like, I certainly didn't expect to get anything on air. But it really is important for those of us that, we've worked hard. We give back to the community. The readers support us. And then in turn, they entrust us with being able to provide for others as well. And so community radio station is something that's on my heart. But more importantly to me, a lot of times is that I know who it's going to. It's not just generically,
Right.
readers. And you, obviously, I went and checked out the website. I went and checked out what was going on, and you've been making an effort to support different things. And so we're just trying to help you help others.
Yeah, and I actually, I'm one of the hosts. We have about 60, I think, different programs on the show. Like the station
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. And so
Mm-hmm.
they have, it's interesting because it's set up, as a nonprofit. They have a board of directors and all that, and then I have my show on the weekend on Sundays, and I talk with authors and artists and entertainers, and so a donation goes a very long way. So I wanted to just go ahead and tell you thank you. I know that you weren't doing it, to like get kudos or anything like that, but like I said off the air, you're the first guest that I've had that did that, and it was a super nice surprise, and it's really nice of you to do that, man. So thank you so much for doing that.
You're welcome.
So, okay, like I said, I've been wanting to have you on the show for a while. Craig Martelle's been on the show a couple times, and the cool thing about it is you have really revolutionized with the 20 books of 50K. You and Craig, you guys have really kind of done, and the whole team. I mean, there's like a whole team of people, but you started this baby, and
Mm-hmm.
it's changed the publishing not just the face of publishing, but also the industry. I mean, like, Amazon is talking to you guys saying, hey, what do we need to do? And so can I ask you, like, I would just kind of want to start from like where, from the beginning, because, our listeners might not really be aware of it. But how did you come about the idea to start this group? And, what gave you that genesis to kind of go with it?
Okay. So I released my first book in November of 2015, The Arthurian Gambit, and I wrote two more and released them that month. So November I had three. These were about 65, 70,000 word books. In December I did one more, four, and that was released somewhere around the 15th of December. And then by January I had my fifth out, and I was growing a very beneficial fan group. And they were very much, so you put a book out, and you've been writing this book now, 4 weeks.
That's
Had an
incredible.
opportunity at that time. I had a client who was paying me monthly, but they didn't need my work. They were stuck in something else. So I had money coming in, blessed, but I had nothing to do. And I had
Okay.
always kind of wanted to be my own writer.
Mm-hmm.
And so half bucket list for me, half bucket list for my oldest, who actually is a better writer than I am. And so I was going down, and in my life, I had been very entrepreneurial ever since I was a teenager, but I had failed pretty much at all of my entrepreneurial efforts. So I like to say I had a PhD in failure. And when my series was taking off, I knew what failure looked like. So success was something I figured was just the mere opposite of that. And so what happened is, in the back of my books, I would write something called author notes. And I kind of created that based on a little bit, just a tidbit of information John Conroe had provided one time about his past.
Mm-hmm.
And so in there, I was explaining what was going on with this author business I was doing. And four of my fans reached out, and they had questions. And I had been very upfront, going, if anyone has any questions about this indie author stuff, just ask me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm almost as new about this as anyone else. And so we were talking in the Arthurian Gambit fans page, and I said, hey, you know what, let's move this to a group. And now this had happened, this is about February, March, probably February-ish or January, probably January of 2016. And so I moved it, I created the group 20 Books to 50K, and it's based on something that happened to me back in November, just a couple of months before. And what had happened is, my wife had been asked by family friend, her really close friends, to do to minister their Spanish version of their wedding. And they had it in Cabo San Lucas because her female friend's family is all Spanish. And Judith can speak both English and Spanish. So we were down there, and she was actually in Vegas for an event, and she had to fly down a day later. So I'm over there in Cabo San Lucas. I don't speak the language. I'm I'm at the Pacific, and I'm enjoying myself. It's really pretty. Wife's not there, and I'm writing. I'm writing like crazy because, once again, this is in between books 2 and 3. And I'm starting to look at my income, and I'm seeing that even with 2 books, I'm making between $12 and $15 a day. I'm like, wait a minute. And so I pull out the spreadsheet and I start calculating this out, and I go, if I can just do $7.50 a day, if I can get 20 books made and do $7.50 a day, then I would make $50,000 annually, which is more than enough to retire in Cabo San Lucas. And so that all of a sudden became my goal. Write 20 books as fast as I could. Now, remember, I'd done 2 books in probably 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, that's
I
a pretty incredible stint itself.
Thank you. So what happened at that point, now I didn't realize, of course, once you get to so many books, your brain craters after a while for most of us. And so that's where the term 20 books, if I could just get there, I could make 50,000 a year. And it just so happens that the answer is you can get there with 1 book. You can get there with 500 books. There's variances, but for me, that was my goal. And so when I took these 4 fans and I created the group, I helped them. Now, when they all released into the top 10,000 on Amazon, which is a high ranking to be able to do that from nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was also, at the time, I had found K-Boards, an indie writing community, after I had started releasing books. And there were some discussions at that time and some individuals who, I would say, just they disagreed with some things that I was doing. Releasing fast was one of them. And so when the 4 fans who released their books, when they hit top 10,000, during that time, I'd been getting fed up with some of the pushback, because in my mind, I was trying to help.
Right.
I'm trying to explain to people, this is what I'm doing. You don't have to do it. You don't have to believe me. I'm not charging anything for this. But it did, I'm Texan by birth. I'm Texan by mindset. If you push at me, I will push back. And so I got to a point where I'm like, you know what? I don't need to deal with this. I'll take the people who wish to push their business, because this isn't a how to write group. This is a business focused group. And I'm like, I will just let people know that I'm going to be over here in Facebook. And if people would like to share what's going on with them and encourage themselves, simple rules, then we will move forward. And in doing so, I thought we might go to 8, Adam. I'm like, hey, maybe another 4 people show up. I can handle 8 people, helping them. Wow. I was wrong.
You actually just hit a milestone too, didn't you?
Yeah, we're about to hit it in 54 people. So at that point, I thought we'd go to 8. We went to 80 the first weekend.
Yeah.
Craig was in kind of that first wave there in the next couple of weeks. And the milestone you're talking about is fast forward now. That was 2016. We're in 2020. So about 4 years later, we're about to hit 40,000 in the next week.
Yeah, that's incredible. And these are all people that are focused on their writing and publishing.
I would like to believe that. I unfortunately have the cynical attribute that some of it are people who are trying to figure out how to swindle money out of others.
Yeah.
But we have 2 rules. The first one I will work on and say that, how not
Don't
to be
a jerk. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually a different 4-letter word, y'all, but we can't see it on the community radio.
So, don't be a jerk, because my feeling is, if you're an adult, act like an adult. I'm not here to teach you, train you, or excuse you for your actions. So we're very much, don't be a jerk. If when we kicked out almost 5,000 people. Mm-hmm. And the second one, and it's not only for that, the second one, and that's really important to me, is don't sell yourself. Don't sell your stuff. Yeah. And the reason for that is because a lot of authors are incredibly kind-hearted individuals, but they're persuaded by someone going, oh my goodness, I really need blah, blah, blah. Can you just buy my book for 99 cents?
Yeah.
The answer is no.
Yeah.
So that's been from the very beginning. Don't promote yourself unless it's an area we allow that in. There are some different ones when we say, hey, if you're an artist, or if you're a cover artist, put your information below. We do that occasionally. But in general, we stomp down on anybody trying to promote themselves, and we stomp down on anyone being rude.
Yeah. Hold that thought for a second, Mike.
You bet.
You are listening to WRUU-LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. And this is the Adam Messer Show. And my special guest today is Michael Anderle, a.k.a. Mike. And we're talking about the genesis of the 20 Books to 50K group, which is, in my opinion, I getting into self-publishing a couple years ago. I'm still new to it, Mike. I've only published a couple of indie books, and I've been part of an anthology, but I'm still, working on my back catalog. But the different groups that I have joined, and I also joined the Horror Writers Association when I had a story published last year. But the different organizations that I have joined, the 20 books to 50K group has been my favorite one because of those reasons that you said. Because the basically it's a simple premise, don't be a jerk, don't self promo. And the resources are vast. I mean, like, it's literally an encyclopedia worth of knowledge collected in one area. And then with the pandemic, y'all have been doing all of these different video interviews and just talking with folks, and then the stuff like when you do the conferences, you guys make that stuff all available for free for people to look at and review. And I love the fact that your mentality is, okay, we're all adults here. I don't have to train you or show you what to do, but I do expect you to have good behavior, and I do expect you to be a good community citizen. I love that about the group. So,
I appreciate that.
When you first started, like you said, you started off with like a small wave of basically readers that were reading your books and whatever, and then you got into here it is 4 years later. You're about to hit the 40,000 member mark. What was it like in that early? You were starting to talk about it, but what was it like in those early days of the group? And and obviously you were still. I mean, like you have hundreds of books out now, different publications and things like that. But you were still kind of getting into formatting that rapid. I don't know if rapid release is the right word for it, but you were still kind of like laying that foundation out. So what was that like?
It was definitely fun. So let's admit that part, right? Yeah. Most of us are relatively new at that time, and I've since called us kind of like the freshman class of 2015, 2016. There were many of us that were, going up, so to speak.
Right.
And what happens is over time, you definitely grow apart, or others take the place, or, it got to a point where at that time I was sharing, my income, but it became a point where I had to stop sharing my income because people weren't believing it. It became unattainable to them. Mm. And so, which was a little shocking, right? Because at the time when I started, I really wanted to know what's the limit? Is there a limit? What's the reality? And so one of the things I do encourage is in the group, or did encourage, and it continues to be encouraged, is allowing people to celebrate their financial accomplishments. And it does a couple of different things. One of which is it lets people know that there might be someone at their skill level going, I made $300 this month. I applaud that.
Yeah.
Because $300 to someone who has to pay for Infamil is amazing. Infamil is one of the most expensive things in the world that you have to pay by the ounce when you have babies.
Yeah. And it's a great supplemental income as well, for the folks that are wanting to, move forward with their author career.
It really is. And you can do that. I mean, there's so many benefits to accomplishing this, not the least of which is the ability to get stories that have maybe been in your heart out there, mm-hmm. but also sharing that people are accomplishing this. It became a concern that because of the success stories that were there, a few people likened the whole thing to some of the marketing where they're like, you too can have this. And it's like, it really isn't. And one facet about 20 books that has stayed true is we don't make any money off of it.
Yeah.
That's
one of the things that really appealed to me, because if you were, and Mike, I call it the shovels and jeans, because back in the gold rush days, mm-hmm. the ones mm-hmm. who made the money were not the miners. It was the folks selling shovels and jeans to the miners.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, if it really were kind of like a shovels and jeans thing, you'd be like, hey, yeah, now that you're in the group, and pressure you to buy this or buy that, and there's none of
Yeah.
that. There's none of that. I mean, like, y'all have different resources, like the different videos. You know, the whole video series that you have.
Hmm.
You know, I mean, it would take forever to go through. You know, all of those, so you can kind of cherry pick. Like, okay, well, I'm having problems with marketing. I want to focus on my marketing, and there's stuff resources for that. No
Hmm.
charge. There's no charge, and so yeah, that's one of the things. I actually kind of crazy enough, but I had joined a bunch of different author groups, and trying to figure out, like, what's a better group to be part of or whatever. And the
Hmm.
20 books has been really the only consistent one that I've stayed with, because I don't post a whole lot in the groups. I'm more of like a lurker, I
you
guess.
you and 39,300 others do not post.
Yeah, but I read all the time. Like, I'm constantly checking the 20 books group out. I'm constantly
Hmm.
reading it, watching the videos, and and but like you said, this is I don't understand where somebody would have actually thought that y'all were trying to kind of be like a pyramid scheme type thing, or whatever. It
Oh,
doesn't
we
make
got it
sense
from
to
one of
me.
the. Yeah, we've got it actually. It was so interesting. So LMBP and publishing, the concept's been around since the beginning, even when my company only published me.
Right.
So we started it that way. But we've been going to Frankfurt. We've been there 3 years now. We've been to London 2 years, and of course they shut this year off. But we were in London anyway. We've been to China twice. I mean, we've been to Book Expo twice. You know, as a publishing company, we're going after bigger and bigger fish, right? And so some of the companies that you want to meet as an indie author will really only be at these events. And I'll give you an example. Publishers Weekly, the Publishers Weekly, which is a huge magazine, it's been around for more than 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's been part of the industry forever. And we started meeting these people in Frankfurt. Was our first meeting through a contact with Rami Vance. And it's grown over time so that we would start seeing them in, of course, Frankfurt the second year, but we also saw them at Books Expo. And when those companies see you at these events, it elevates your company.
Yeah.
So what Judith is my wife, but she's also the CMO of the company. What we decided was a lot of the indie publishers can't go to the events for whatever reason, doesn't matter. We worked our resources with them, with Ingram Spark, you mentioned before, with others, and asked them, would they come to 20 books? Now, what's interesting is the trad pub, those individuals really don't understand the indie area. They really do not. For some of them, it was individuals who, and unfortunately, the mentality goes back 10 years where someone would self-publish and they'd buy 1,000 books and then they'd sell these books out of their trunk. That was the mentality at the time. And we were trying to explain to our contacts, I'm like, no, we actually sell 40,000 books a month, and that doesn't include our Kindle Unlimited.
Wow.
So in Kindle Unlimited for us, I mean, we put a PR release out last year sometime that we had surpassed 1.25 billion pages read.
Billion.
Billion with a
What?
B.
Wow.
So we. Yeah, and we're trying to get these companies to understand that there's something bigger there.
It's a
Now, we
shift
were
in
able,
readership, really. I mean, like,
yes.
you got people that are looking, and that I mean, like, personally, that's one of the things that attracts me to the whole thing, is because I like comic books and I like sci-fi, and
Hmm.
I like stuff like that, and and I'm not knocking anything out there. I'm not trying to be negative at all, but I like original content, and
Hmm.
I like to see like a new twist on, because like the hero's journey that's been done a million times or whatever. I like to see something new and original, and with the traditional stuff, you still get some things, but with indies, the quality of what people are doing with the indie side of it, it's just as good, if not better, than what's going on in traditional publishing. And you also get the originality of the indie side. You're not, you don't have somebody who's just trying to, do the safe bet. Sometimes they put stuff out there, and you're like, wow, I wouldn't have, expected that.
Yeah, absolutely. What you find is people who have a story in their heart and they're like, why doesn't somebody write this?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't they write a vampire story where this happens? It irks them enough. And they're like, you know what? Screw it. I'll write it.
Yeah.
And there you go.
Yeah. I think that's a wonderful thing about it. And, with going back to the resources with the 20 books, there is pretty much A to Z with indie publishing, availability of being able to research, and not only doing the research, but also having, somebody like yourself who, this is, your industry, this is what you're doing, and you've separated, what you're doing. Your company's been very successful. You've been very successful with it. Being able to model that and say, okay, my genre might be something different than your genre, but publishing and doing those things, like the book packaging and, the
Mm-hmm.
marketing and those kind of things, those are all things that you share freely with folks. And so I wonder, when you got the attention of, like Publishers Weekly and some of the other groups, what were those early conversations like? I know you said that they were kind of like 10 years back. They're like, oh, thinking people were, selling books out of their trunk basically. But what were some of those early conversations like?
It was very tough to get them to realize that there is even a different opportunity out there.
Mm.
Because the way that they had grown up, a lot of them were still going after that market. Ergo, they didn't realize there was a secondary market. So if the people reaching out to them was coming through their own marketing efforts, was just solidifying that these are the people that are responding, there's no change.
Mm.
And I do like history. I do like finding out why. Like, for instance, we call it trad or traditional. Why is the traditional model still saying the same? And so I would just research that. I would go back and, I would read books. Shatskin, Mike and his father, they have different books about the trad side that help a person such as myself understand where why it's still doing the way that it's doing. And then I read things like the Rebel Bookseller to understand why the bookstores were doing what they were doing. And so I see where the gotcha was and the encouragement. Come check out 20 books. And so it was a blessing. Ingram's a $1 billion company.
Mm-hmm.
And they had the top person at Ingram Spark, Robin Cutler. She brought a team of 3 people to come see what was going on. And Kevin, which is spelled Cevin, which is really unique the first time you try to pronounce it when you're on a Zoom call with him. But Kevin also brought 3, Mark, our sales guy. And so, they're there. Now, I don't recognize face and names very well. It's certainly something I try to work on, but I'm horrible at it. And so this November, when we're in the beginning, now you have to kind of set the stage a little bit. Sam's Town is a casino that's really more for the locals. It's a Boyd Gaming casino. It's out on the east side of Las Vegas, just a little bit north of Henderson. But they have what they call Sam's Town Live, and it can hold 1,000 to 1,200 people in chairs, and it has a rock star type stage on it. And this is the opening as we're getting ready. The buzz is going on. There's 1,000 people in there, and inside that audience includes 14 people from Amazon, 6 from Google, Kobo. I could kind of do a who's list, but also 3 from Publishers Weekly, 3 from Ingram.
Wow.
And had an opportunity. My wife is walking with me. We're going from the front to the, where we were on the stage, toward the back to go. I don't remember what I was doing, but she stops me and says, "Hey, just to let you know, here's Kevin and everyone." And I look over, and Kevin, whom I normally see dressed up in a suit at one of these events in Frankfurt or London or whatever, he's just in kind of like a hunter's jacket, the ones with no sleeveless jacket, blue puff thing, and so it was great to see them. And he's like, "I've got to tell you, this is the most exciting event I have been to, and I've been to a lot."
Wow.
And so they could feel the energy before we opened. And since you've spoken to Craig, these tickets are as cheap as possible.
Oh yeah.
There's no money involved.
You guys just sell it for cost, and then you also sponsor people. I mean, like you do the little scholarships and you sponsor people that really want to go, and they might not be able to have the means to go. You sponsor them to be able to go. So that's pretty awesome. Mike, we've got to do the station
Go for it.
break real quick. Everybody, you're tuning in to WRUU-LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. And here are some of our community announcements.
This portion of WRUU-LP Savannah Soundings programming is brought to you by listeners and the Ships of the Sea Museum. One of the hidden secrets of the Ships of the Sea Museum is its gardens. Native plants are interspersed with exotic tropical plants throughout the gardens. Visitors can enjoy everything that has earned the Ships of the Sea Museum the Trip Experts 2015 Experts' Choice Award. You can find out more about the Ships of the Sea Museum at the website shipsofthesea.org. Now you have a chance to support both Savannah Independent Artists and WRUU during this shelter-in-place order to stop the spread of COVID-19. Creatives in Need is a group of independent artists hosted by the Roots Up Gallery, which is collaborating with WRUU during this shelter-in-place to offer an online art gallery at www.rootsupgallery.com. For every work of art sold at this online gallery, the artists receive 80% from the sales and 20% goes to WRUU and its programs like Art on the Air. Interested listeners can go to www.rootsupgallery.com to start shopping today.
WRUU 107.5 FM is a new and different listener-supported and all-volunteer community radio station for Savannah. Our diverse broadcast and web programming is supported by generous listeners who value our passion and spunk. We are independent of other media and receive no government or large corporate support. People like you are the largest and most important source of our funding. Go to WRUU.org to find out how you can make a one-time or monthly contribution. Thank you.
And here is Sebastian Messer playing us some live music. Everybody, take it away, Bass. Thanks, Bass. That's awesome. And welcome back, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. So, Mike, right before the break, you were talking about Kevin, and I'm sorry, I forgot his last name, but you're talking about how Kevin, like he had said that this was, the most fun that he'd had at any of these events, right?
Yeah, it was. His last name is Breyerman. And just to round out, and he's the executive vice president and publisher, and then the VP general manager Carl Pritzkett was there, and then the guy that is responsible for the advertising around where we are, which is Las Vegas, Nevada, is Mark Abbott. But anyway, those are the three guys that were there that time, and we received a fantastic accolades from Ingram Spark again. It was really a blessing to have them there, to have them tell us after hundreds and hundreds of conferences that they'd been to that it was one of the most compelling, and to let them see the new side of independent publishing.
I think that is an incredible story, because there has been a stigma around indie publishing. There still is a stigma around indie publishing, and people just think, okay, well, anybody can publish, so there's a bunch of garbage out there. That's true. That's not not to deter from that. There is a lot of stuff out there, and I don't want to call it garbage. I would just like to say some of it is just maybe not as on the better side of the good scale, But then you have like stuff like you guys are doing, like you Craig, and some of the other authors there that you have the, oh my gosh, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. You have taken the culmination of everything that's good with the indie side of publishing, and then you've pushed it to the next level, So like, get an example, myself. I started writing for the Savannah Morning News, and I'm a published journalist for the newspaper here in town. This will be my 6th year doing as a freelance journalist. When I wanted to get into writing and publishing my own books, I was like, you know what? I went to some of these comic book conventions around town and met some folks and, you know, some indie authors, and I really didn't know anything about them. You know, like 2014 is when I first met my friend Win Strock, who was like the first kind of indie author, and he was published through a small publishing house, and they're no longer around, but Win's still my friend. And so I started thinking, like, okay, you know, I like to write. And I was, you know, like you, as a kid, I read a ton of sci-fi and fantasy and, you know, stuff like that. As an adult, you know, it's more like, you know, leadership and management stuff. And I didn't really read fiction. But I was like, oh my gosh, this would be so cool to be able to, you know, write my own book. And the first time I held my own book in my hands, I mean, I don't want to say it was you know, it's not exactly up on the level of holding my, you know, my wife and my baby, you know, but it felt like, you know, kind of that euphoria, you know, and, but then when you know, go past that, you're like, oh, wow. Okay. So I have a book. What now? What do I do now? And that was where I was getting stuck. And, you know, and really, I'm not making a lot of money with it, but that's my goal to move into that next level of publishing for myself so that I can, you know, be financially independent with it. And that doesn't mean I'm going to necessarily quit my day job per se. You know, if I get to the level like, you know, maybe you or Craig, I might be able to do something like that, but that's not the point, you know. But what I found with, you know, being part of the group and seeing, you know, watching the videos of watching like during this pandemic, you know, I've been looking forward to seeing like the videos with you and Craig and, you know, the different people that are on there. And that kind of, that staying power, you know, that grit or that persistence, I think that's one of the big things that sets what you're doing apart from other stuff that's kind of like, you know, they've got a lot of momentum and then nothing. And then, you know, like kind of a small hump of momentum and then nothing. It's like every single day y'all are challenging people to do better. You know, y'all are putting out stuff like, okay, well, this is what's going on in the industry and this is what's going on, you know, with, you know, folks around, not just in the U.S., you know, not just in like a particular state or region, but what's going on like in England or what's going on, you know, in other parts of the world, and how can we provide, you know, our books for our readers out there. I think I think it's really interesting that you all do that.
And to that, you know, I'm going to have to give Craig Martelle the credit for really pushing during this pandemic to try to be on every day and have, you know, some video is one of the ways of the outreach. And so, you know, I'm going to have to throw that on his shoulders. They're as broad as they are, as marine as they are. You know, I've done it now a couple of times to try to give him a break. It's not my personality to do that anymore for various reasons, some of which is that I personality-wise, I was always that guy who wanted to be a rock star in the teenage years, which for me is a long time ago, and realized I don't have the personality to be that person.
Right,
you know, once you get a taste of, you know, like doing a 20 books event, which is a week-long event, really, I'm done. I just want to crawl into a hole and not show up again until I finally, you know, come out of it again. And so I you know, the company that I run has more than enough interactions with people to cause me to want to crawl into a hole by the end of the day.
Yeah, I can imagine. I know doing and I've never done an event as big as the ones y'all do, but doing local events, I know it's depleting, you know, because I used to do photography before I started getting to writing. And I mean, I love people and I love talking with folks, but after a certain point, it's like, I'm drained, you know, I'm done. And then I've never done a week-long event like that, but I can only imagine. I mean, it can be very depleting.
See, it's interesting. The definition of introverted and extroverted has changed since I became part of this industry. It's the understanding as an introverted person, it requires energy for them to be on stage, so to speak, just to be out, right? Whether that's technically stage or not. Extroverted people gain energy from doing that. So if you put them in a room and don't let them interact with people, it will suck the energy out of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it doesn't mean, like, before that, I understood extroverted people were the ones, who love to be on stage. And while they technically can, that isn't actually the reality. So I enjoy being on stage just fine for a little while.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, I need to recharge. I need to do something. It is amazing what people helping people can do. And it is edifying, encouraging to see so many people, in this case, in the group and external to the group, help each other through this time that we're going through.
Yeah.
And so that's a faith in humanity. And, kudos to everybody doing that just for the last few months has been wonderful.
I agree. I think it's just been, it's so crazy. The other day I posted on Facebook, I was like, we thought that the pandemic, we were sold on the idea that the next pandemic would be like the zombie plague. And and really, it turns out it was the folks that believed it would be the zombie plague or the zombies. And I was like, it's so cool to see how many artists and entertainers and businesses, all walks of life, have just kind of come together and said, hey, we're this is what we can do to help others. And they're not trying to do it just because they want to sell something. They're doing it because it's like, okay, wait a minute, this is the community that's been supportive of us with our business or our neighbors or whatever, and if we have a little extra, we're going to try to share that so that everybody is kind of okay. You know what I mean? And I love seeing that.
Absolutely. So Adam, what are some of the things? So you've been this a year and a half, right? You've been focused on this as an opportunity, and I encourage, one of the things that I'd like to talk about is the difference between hitting the button. In this case, I'm talking about the publishing button.
Yeah.
What it was your life before you put it up for distribution. And for anybody that's listening, if you're considering writing and making a business out of this, I heartily encourage you to do so. The FAQ, the frequently asked questions, that you can either see on ours, or frankly, you can go to a lot of the different websites. I mentioned Ingram Spark before, or Publishers Weekly, or Apple. Apple has a brand new site. They just released it a week ago.
I saw that. I was so excited about it. Actually, I went to sign up for it, and I had to get it set up. So I saw that because of your post.
Oh, well, thank you. They pulled together some of the information you really need to understand on how to publish on Apple. And remember, folks, there is no barrier to entry. You need a computer. That's about the whole barrier to entry and an internet connection. Beyond that, there's one of the things about indie publishing is it doesn't cost a whole lot to get started. You do need to understand and be willing to work. We're adamant about that part. This isn't about telling you that there's no 1, 2, 3, you're rich.
No,
it's
definitely
here's
not.
all of the information. Grab it as you need it, and you will learn going forward, right? None of it do you have to pay for. You can if that's your style. Some people really learn best from learning from teachers, and those teachers should be paid. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot there that's available, and you have to understand what's there for you. So, but from the Apple side of things, they pulled it together. They made a really kind of Apple-y, if you will, for Apple Books, and now you don't have to own an Apple computer in order to get released in Apple. And you have to make decisions like what's trad, what's wide, or I should say what's wide versus exclusive. What does that term mean? Well, what that term means is Amazon has, kind of like Netflix, all you can eat for a price. That's called Kindle Unlimited, KU. And if you put your book in Kindle Unlimited, you're signing an agreement that book is not available anywhere else but on an Amazon store.
Yeah.
Exclusive.
Yeah.
If, and some people, there's a lot of reasons for doing it. There's a lot of reasons you wouldn't want to do it. That's a personal decision. If you do go wide, it means you're going to be starting to look at Apple. You're going to go to Google. You're going to go to hundreds, and I kid you not, over the world, there are hundreds of little bitty stores that could be in Zimbabwe that your book might end up on. One of the things I'm most happy about is through Publish Drive, which is a company that will help distribute your book out to different stores and make it easier on you. We're in China. With one of my series, we're on Dang Dang.
Wow.
That was something, that getting a book into China and selling it is hard to do.
Oh, I imagine.
And so, I was excited to be there, and I get kicks out of, my author part, not just my publishing part, but the author part of things. And so to have the Opus X series out there in not only the world, which by now is easy for us to figure out how to do, but in China was a neat thing. We sold recently the rights from audio side to the multicast recording for the Cthulhu Gambit.
Wow.
And I realized that for me, that was a cooler feeling than knowing that it was optioned to go to a movie.
That is really cool.
Yeah, I'm not a movie person. That's not where, I'm books. That's what I love the most. I remember driving back and forth to work, listening to a multicast recording, thinking, how cool is this?
Mm-hmm.
And then as a company, like you had mentioned in the opening of the show, we have done 220 of our own books. It's interesting when you go, it's like the cost of implementing and publishing a book can be variably expensive. But when you get into audio, you get into a whole new level of, oh my goodness, when am I going to get this money back?
Yeah. Hold that thought for a second, Mike. Everybody, you are listening to WRUU LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul, and this is the Adam Messer Show, and my special guest today is Michael, a.k.a. Mike Anderle. I love audiobooks. It's so crazy you say that because a friend of mine turned me on to audiobooks, I don't know, probably like 5 or 6 years ago, because like I said, I used to love reading, and I still do. I read business books and leadership books and self-development books every day I read. And my friend was like, he has ADHD, and so it's difficult for him to be able to focus reading a physical book or even an ebook. But he was listening to these, ebooks, not ebooks, I'm sorry, audiobooks. And so we go to lunch and stuff like that. And, I'd catch the book and we're, listening to it at lunch or whatever. And I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool, because a lot of these, like you said, it's a multicast production. On the nonfiction side, a lot of it is done with the author. The author, you're actually hearing the author, and then you get, some personal asides, or, you get some like kind of stuff, extra material for the book. And yeah, I'm a big fan of audiobooks. And I when I saw that, I was like, wow, I didn't even realize that you had all these audiobooks for your different, productions that you're doing. I think that's a whole nother world. I mean, It
is, and the multicast for me was just a neat feeling, if you will. And another way to sell your rights, by the way, for anyone listening, you can license the rights for single narrator and sell the rights for multicast recording. They are considered two different product lines.
I actually had my first audiobook produced last year. I had a short story in a horror anthology with a small publishing press, and because I love audiobooks so much, I was like, okay, I want to get this produced, and I commissioned and hired a local it's a friend of mine, but she's also a local actor named Alidria Hurt, and so I hired her to produce the audiobook for me, and I haven't released it on Amazon yet, because the anthology, it was like a 6-month exclusive publishing or whatever. That time period's over. But what I did was I took the audiobook and I released it on my podcast for free, and shared it. And I just, it was so interesting to be able to do that process and to have, like an actual audiobook, again, kind of like holding up that paperback or whatever, like, what? And when I listened to it, I was like, even though I wrote the story, hearing it in her voice, it kind of gave this different, like, I don't know, like nuance or inflection, or I don't know how to explain it, but just like a kind of almost like a different meaning for some of the parts because of the way that she narrated it, Have you ever had that experience where, you're like, wow, I wrote it like this, but then the way that the narrator interpreted it, you're like, oh, it gives a kind of a whole another meaning to it.
Oh, absolutely. Kate Rudd did that for a book when she narrated, and Justin Sloan was the author who encouraged he and I to use that. It did. I was listening to the very opening, and it was almost, the difference for me was in the story in my mind, it read a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
When she did it, I'm like, who put William Shakespeare quality actors on this?
What?
It was just it
Yeah.
just brings it to life. And so on this audio recording, there's a company by the name of Book Funnel you might be familiar with, and Damon Courtney has a way to release audio. So just take a look at it for your own personal stuff. You might be able to use their services for, encouraging people to, get on a mailing list, get my audio, get on the mailing list.
That's a great idea. And see, that's another. I mean, this is not rehearsed, people. This is just me and Mike having a casual conversation, and this is the kind of stuff that happens, in this, in basically the organization that you started and have grown. This kind of thing, like resources, like, hey, did you you got this? Did you ever think about checking this out? And I think that's one of the great things that y'all are doing with the 20 books of 50K. And then also, in the next hour, I want to talk more about like with your publishing. You partner with a lot of different folks, and you have hundreds and hundreds of publications, different books and audiobooks and things like that. I definitely want to get in more into that in this next hour, but yeah, it's really cool. I'm so glad we had a chance to this hour to kind of talk about some of the behind the scenes stuff with the and really this is relatively new. I mean, like if you think about, you've done this in like what, the last 5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's I think that's
we're coming up on 5 years in November.
Yeah,
November 2nd will be the release of the first book.
That's what I'm saying. This is something like, and I also I definitely want to ask you about when you're saying that you had kind of failed as an entrepreneur multiple times. I know that feeling. I've tried small businesses, and I've always had to work another job, but I've always had that mindset of I want to build my own thing. And that's why I keep plugging away and, working, at my own thing. But I definitely want to, pick your brain a little bit more or ask you some more questions about that, because somebody can look at the end result, or they can look at like where you're at now and say, oh, well, it's easy for you to say that because you're at this level. It wasn't like that. You didn't start off there.
No, my third day was 97 cents.
Yeah.
I made 97 cents on my third day of publishing. Not too much.
Yeah. So that's the thing, is like people, and I think that's in life, people see the end result and they're like, oh, well, it's easy for you to say that because, you're the Michael Jordan of, book publishing or whatever. But wait a minute, hold on. Like I said before, this has happened in the last 5 years, right? This is not like, you've been doing this for the last 25 or 30 years. And then, this is something that you built in the last 5 years. And that's
right.
That's an incredible thing to think about, because it really does show the folks that are out there who want to put in the work and want to learn. And, obviously you have to, write, you have to have a good story. That's like the meat and potatoes right there. But, it shows that, hey, this is something that's attainable for folks. This, the people that want to be, the top performers. And if it's kind of break it down with like, an organization, you're going to have people that are top performers, and they're the ones that are, doing great. A lot of people kind of meet the middle, they do enough, and then you got poor performers, but it's one of the things I think with the way you guys set it up and the way you share things, for the folks that are like, maybe they're in the middle and they want to become a top performer. You share the tools and the skill sets necessary. I think that's just a wonderful thing. And again, for free, you don't charge anybody. You're like, hey, this is, and you're not trying to sell your books either. That's the other thing. It's like, people might think, okay, well, you've got 40,000 people or almost 40,000 people in your group. You've got a built-in group to buy your books. No, you guys don't, you don't share your books. You're not saying
have any nonfiction.
Well, yeah, you're not like, hey, buy our books either. So it's just really interesting.
Just yesterday, the only reason Craig has a nonfiction line is because he kept getting asked the same dang question over and over again.
Yeah.
So he just put it into a book going, here it is. Now, it's on Kindle Unlimited, which most of the authors in the group already have Kindle Unlimited. Ergo, it's free. or even yesterday in celebration of the hitting 40,000, he had all the books he could for free, and he does it, I don't know, half a dozen times a year.
Yeah, he just had some for free like a couple weeks ago, and he also I think they did, I don't know what they changed or not, but I remember you could give away so many with Amazon. I think they changed something with that.
Yeah, they changed that.
Yeah, but
yeah, we used to do that often, and
yeah. All right.
unfortunately.
Okay, Mike. So we're going to do a station break, everybody. And Mike, I appreciate you being on this first hour, and then we're going to come back right around 4:00, everybody. So stay tuned.
Hour 2.
Yep, for hour 2, and Michael Anderle, aka Mike, is going to be gracious enough to hang out with us for another hour, and we're going to be talking about more of the nitty gritty of the skill sets and things like that necessary to go from having a dream of wanting to be an author to actually doing it. So, all right, thanks everybody.
You are listening to WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul. This is Sounds of Tarab from the album Zanzibar.